With each passing minute, that huge print seemed more unreal. Halfway through the valley, they stopped to look at the river. The bed was half full, muddy, debris-laden, with a sheen of dust on the surface. But it was water, wet, tangible, undeniable. Watson took off his hat and rubbed his head and swore. "Good afternoon." They turned. Joe Merkelos was smiling at them. "Hello," Jerry said. Watson glowered. Merkelos moved beside them and looked down. His brilliant teeth flashed. "Good, is it not?" The guttural words came out flat, one at a time, as though shaped carefully. "Better than money in this part of the world." Jerry's eyes narrowed. "Did you know about the water, when you bought the valley?" Merkelos smiled again. He was bareheaded, dressed in dark trousers and a loose, short-sleeved blouse. His neck and muscular forearms gleamed bronze in the sunlight. "You like what we do here?" he asked in his deep, hesitant manner. "You've done wonders," Watson said shortly. Merkelow's smoky eyes held Jerry's. "My people are used to work." Slowly, significantly, Watson said, "The thing we don't understand is how you managed to bring so much equipment, the exact things you needed, right down to the last nail." Merkelow's inscrutable gaze swung around. The smile lingered on his face. "We are careful people. We plan a long way ahead." Watson opened his mouth for another question, and shut it. Merkelow's attention had left them. The man was listening, his head slightly cocked. After a moment he turned. "I am happy to see you making a visit. I hope you come again." He nodded and walked away swiftly. Wordlessly, Jerry and the sheriff got back into the car. "Could you hear what he was listening to?" Jerry muttered. "I didn't hear a thing. Notice anything else about Dark Valley?" "No flowers. Not one dog." Jerry's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "And who has ever gotten a single clear look at one of the kids?" Jerry spent a restless night. On the way to his office the next morning he met Watson, talking to a farmer on the courthouse steps. "Listen to Carson here," the sheriff said grimly. Carson's straw hat bobbed as he talked. "I'm waiting to see the farm advisor. Something's gone wrong out at my place on South Fork. I'm on good bottom land, highest yield in the county. But in the last 2-3 weeks my corn, my wheat, even my berries have stopped growing." Jerry's eyes jumped to Watson. "Yep," Carson went on. "Every single ear o' corn is still a nubbin." He threw out his arms. "And by God, even my wife's radishes has stood still. Ain't anything on earth that'll slow up a radish. How about other stuff? How about eggs? Same thing. Cut right down. Hens lay 1 in 10 now, maybe. Same thing. Cut right down. Hens lay 1 in 10, maybe. And my alfalfa has turned a funny gray-green. Even the fruit." "What about the river?" Watson broke in. "What about the river?" Watson broke in. "You still got water in the South Fork?" "Way down for this time of year, but we got enough." Several people had stopped to listen. One of them, a big tow-headed Swede, burst out excitedly. "Mister, you got the same trouble as my cousin. His crops, they're growing backwards." There was more of the same impossible talk. Jerry made an excuse to get away to his office. He sat at his desk and stared out the window. There wasn't any problem, he tried to tell himself. Anything he could not measure by experience and logic was out, and that had to include giant paw prints and mysteriously missing objects as well as radishes that wouldn't grow. Dark Valley was taking on life and freshness. Fact. The South Fork and portions of the North Fork seemed to be losing fertility. Fact. But to conclude from this that Dark Valley was gaining at the expense of the others, that was the road no reasonable man could allow himself to take. From his window he saw the huge old trees that shaded Wide Bend. They looked suddenly wrong. Weren't they less green, less thick than before? The buildings and streets looked dingier too. And when did all those broken fences, cracked windows, missing shingles show up? Jerry lounged from his chair and strode up and down the room. Then the telephone bell tore through his nerves. He grabbed the instrument. "Watson, I just wanted to tell you, 2 boys have been reported missing." "No. The Simons kids, but they've run away before. They'll be back." Jerry's hand went slowly down. The sheriff's voice echoed hollowly from the lowered receiver. "Well, won't they?" It was after midnight when the doorbell rang. It didn't wake Jerry. He was sitting in bed, staring into the darkness. There was a pile of books beside him. He knocked them over, getting up to answer the door. Mike Carver stumbled in. He dropped into a chair. panting. Jerry went for a bottle and glass. Carver gulped the drink, then held the tumbler out for another. "I run all the way down the ridge," he gasped, "till I catched a ride. I figured you'd ought to know what happened. It got my brother, Ed." Jerry's lean face hardened. "Yeah, it was prowling around. We went after it and shot it. But you said—" "I said it killed Ed." The old lips tightened. "We gave it one slug through the heart and one through the head. They didn't even slow it down." "You mean," Jerry asked carefully, "that they didn't have an effect at all?" Mike nodded. He tipped the glass, whipped his ragged sleeve across his face, and rose. "Where are you going?" "Back to the cabin." "Mike, you can't go there. That's where my brother's body is." "Look," Joe said evenly, "you can't help him now. Stay here with me, and we'll go up in the morning." Carver shook his head. "My brother's there at the cabin. I got to set up with him." There was no arguing against the tone of simple and utter finality. "All right. Wait till I get some clothes on, and I'll drive you back." A few minutes later they passed through West Bend's deserted streets and started out the road to the valley. Carver rolled down his window and spat tobacco juice. "Fella was up to see us," he said gloomily. "Told us people were losing things all over the county, including 2 kids. Said crops have shrunk. Said water in the forks is way down. Said people were getting the idea Dark Valley was living off the rest of the land, feeding on it like a parasite. How crazy you think that is?" Slowly, Jerry said, "I'm not sure it's crazy at all." Carver brooded. "I shot that thing tonight. Should have been dead if a critter it was. Then I seen it go after Ed. You know what all this means, don't you? Witchcraft. Something people haven't believed in for hundreds of years. Maybe they better get starting again." They were nearing the divide that overlooked Dark Valley. "Mike, I've been reading up on it, for hours, everything I could find, and it fits. It's been the hardest struggle I ever had, admitting such a thing existed. But it was either acknowledge that or lose my mind." The night seemed colder as they started downward. Unaccountably, the headlights dimmed. "Something watching us," Carver said suddenly, as the car bored on through the thick and swerving darkness. Jerry nodded. His hands gripped the wheel until the knuckles were white. Sweat began to glisten on his forehead. The headlights picked out a dark spot that looked like a yawning hole. Jerry stamped on the brake, skidded slightly, but there was only a shallow rut, deformed by shadows. He pressed the accelerator, and the motor died. Hurriedly he jabbed the starter button, pumped the gas pedal. Again he pushed it, and again as the lights faded from the drain on the battery. "What's the matter?" Carver's old voice was thin. "Flooded, maybe. Better let her sit a minute." The darkness pressed close around them, shifted and danced. Chill air moved over their faces. "Mike?" "Yeah?" "Why didn't that animal come after you, too?" Carver breathed heavily for a moment. Then he took something from his shirt pocket and held it out. Jerry's fingers moved over it. A crucifix. "My mother gave it to me a long time ago. That's probably the only thing that could have saved you. From what I read, they can't stand a cross. And silver's got something to do with it." Jerry reached into his own pocket. "Feel this." Carver's rough hand fumbled over the object. "Made it this evening. Took a cold chisel and hammered to an old silver tray. Not fancy, but it was all I had." "You done that? Before I came and told you about Ed?" Jerry nodded grimly. "I'm convinced we're up against something terrible. And believe me, Mike, I'm scared." The shadows grew closer, thicker still. They seemed charged with menace. With a catch in his voice, Jerry said, "Maybe now's the time to try it." Carver's head jerked around. "I mean smash Merklos and his tribe for good." "How?" "With fire and the silver crosses." After a long pause, Carver said, "What about Ed?" "We'll get to your cabin. We're not far from the first farm. We can go right up the valley if it works. And if it don't, we might end up like Ed." Carver turned and spat out the window. "I don't want to, but I will." They got out of the car into the humming darkness. They took gunny sacks and rags from the trunk compartment and soaked them in oil from the crankcase. They wired a bundle on the extension handle of the jack, and another on the radio aerial rod, which Jerry unscrewed. They tried to start the car once more, without success. So they turned out the lights and left it. With one torch burning, they started up the road for the first gate. Dark Valley's shadowy legions closed in. There was a rustling and a whispering all around. There were shiny glints where none ought to be. There was an overwhelming feeling that something frightful waited.